3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is McKaylee. I work at Tattered Cover Bookstore. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you. Thank you for shopping locally. Thank you for supporting local independent bookstores. It has been a year and some change, and we would not be here the last year or the last 50 without your support, because that's right, it is Tattered Cover's 50th anniversary this year in 2021, and we owe a huge part of that to you, our community, whether it be virtual or hopefully in person very soon. We're still immensely grateful to you. For those of you who may be joining us who are outside of the Denver metro area, Tattered Cover is a local independent bookstore located in Colorado with 4 locations, soon to be 5. That's right, we're opening up our children's only location in Aurora, Colorado at Stanley Marketplace, for those of you that are local and know that area. That's going to be happening later this summer. And so you can keep an eye out for that by signing up with our email newsletter or following us on social media for all of the updates there. But our current stores are open to the public and you can come and shop with us. Masks are not required at the moment. However, you are more than welcome to wear them and strongly encouraged, especially given our younger audiences that like to come and shop with us as well. So we thank you for adhering to those policies. Before I go any further, I want to let you know that closed captioning is enabled for those who might want it or need it. There's a black bar at the bottom of the screen with a button labeled CC on it. If you click that button, closed captioning is enabled for those who want it or need it. We have so many upcoming events. I can't even tell you, as I'm hosting 99% of them. You guys will all get sick of me. But you can check out all of those events and register for the ones that you're excited for at tattercover.com/event. Now, the one that we have tonight, I'm very excited for. It was already wonderful getting to hear the banter and the joy between these artists here. But I'm going to introduce the 2 editors of the collection here. We have Claire and Benjamin, and they are going to be the ones that are introducing our poets this evening for a reading. If we have time, we will be doing a Q&A afterwards. However, we are here for the wonderful words that these poets have kindly given to us, and so we want to honor that time and hear them fully. And so now it is my honor to welcome Benjamin Grossberg and Clare Rossini. I hope I got that right because I got nervous right before I said it, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera over so we can see them and our lovely poets. Hello. Hi, Benjamin. Hi, Claire.
Hi, McKaylee. And I'm going to begin with a few words, and then Ben will say a few words. We're going to start with a little introduction to how the anthology came to be, and then we'll move into the readings by our 5 poets. So I'd like to start by thanking you, McKaylee, and the Tattered Cover, and of course, our readers tonight for joining us to mark and celebrate the publication of the Poetry of Capital. So we'd like to start with a little backstory, how this anthology came to be. And it goes back to 2015. By the way, the anthology looks like this. Very cool. Ben Franklin and Ray-Bans. Back in 2015, Ben and I were having tea at a local cafe where we meet weekly to talk about poems and other things. And that day, what came up in our conversation was the ever-growing income gap in the US. We both found it deeply troubling that a tiny group of Americans, less than 1%, in fact, less than 1/10 of 1%, control more wealth than the entire bottom 90%. It just is, kind of mind-boggling. And we also discussed other more concrete figures that day. The fact that 40 million Americans live in poverty, including 1 in 6 American children, while 600 families in the US each have a net worth of more than $1 billion. Actually, that was the figure at the time. We've looked up the more recent figures, and in the last 14 months, while 76 million Americans lost their jobs during the pandemic, the US added 50 individuals to the ranks of billionaire. We now have among us 664 Americans whose wealth has hit the 10-figure mark, an extraordinary statistic. So back in 2015, Ben and I mused about this phenomenon of this enormous and growing wealth gap in our country. Its cost to lives and communities and to democracy. The problem seemed huge and amorphous, almost beyond imagining. Just how do you wrap your head around figures like that? But then, being poets, we started thinking about poems we'd read that took on capital as subject and theme. Poems about food stamps and jobs, recessions and gentrification, global supply chains. Yes, there are poems out there about that. One of them is in our book, and local farm stands. It seemed to us such poems lay bare the human stakes of capital in a way that nothing else can, making us first of all feel, and then feel whole truths about the realities that the poems take on. So, having ordered a second round of tea back in 2015, we decided we would put together an anthology featuring such poems. Our hope was and is that readers of this collection would better understand the many and complex ways that capital shapes American lives. And now I'm going to hand the virtual mic over to Ben.
So I'm going to speak a little bit about the anthology itself. If you really want to understand the shape of something, its complexities and its textures, go see what the poets have to say. That's from the introduction. So we set out to curate an anthology that would do just that, see what poets have to say about capital in contemporary America. But how to formulate such a project? Of course, we wanted a range of voices, people of many backgrounds across gender, race, class, sexual orientation, age, region of the country, in order to represent as much of the contemporary American experience with money as possible. That range seems especially important, since our experience of capital is so often inflected through those categories, though we did have trouble finding any super wealthy poets to include in the book. And we chose to include only contemporary poets in order to keep our focus on this moment as far as possible, for all the reasons that Claire just mentioned. The 44 poets in the Poetry of Capital were selected both by invitation and by an open call for submissions, almost 50-50, again, to be true as far as possible to the American experience, not only because we wanted to discover voices, but also because factors like notoriety too inflect our experience of capital. So we have poets who have won Pulitzers and poets who have not yet or only recently published a first book. And we wanted to balance this range of representation with a depth of representation, to look both far out and in deep. So we limited the number of poets, choosing instead to include multiple poems or one longer poem by each, to give readers a sense of larger projects, hopefully to move toward a fuller representation of who we are. In keeping with this humanist strategy, we also asked these poets to step out from behind their work in original prose statements, to ruminate on money and poetry in any way they saw fit. And the statements are wonderful, some providing intimate biographical context, others complex rumination, and others are as rich with lyric discovery as poems themselves. They alone are a great reason to buy the book. But the best reason to buy the book is, of course, the excellent poems. And now it's time to hear some of them. We're really delighted to have such an incredible lineup for tonight. Thank you again to all our readers. Our first reader is Sochi Ketzel Candelaria. Her book, Empire, was published in 2011 by the University of Arizona Press. Her work has appeared in The Nation, New England Review, Gulf Coast, and Seneca Review, and she has received fellowships from Breadloaf Writers Conference and the National Endowment for the Arts. Sochi Ketzel is currently a professor at City College of San Francisco. So let's welcome Sochi Ketzel.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, Claire. Yes, when I was first asked to give some poems to this anthology, I felt like the divine creator was shining down on me, because I feel like most of my work does deal with how do we navigate the self in light of the other, and how can we use love as a force to create a sustainable living environment for humans and the whole planet. So I felt very blessed that I was involved, and so thank you both. So I also just want to say I was shocked that there's these huge photographs in the book, and at first it threw me, and they're gorgeous, and they add that human element that Ben was talking about, and it's just, so it gives me hope in a time when there's a lot to be concerned about. So I'll begin by reading one of the poems in the anthology, and then a poem that's pretty new that sort of plays with this, and two more, and then I'll pass the mic. So this is called Surrender Number 4, Take Notice, Take Nothing, for Millennials. Residue of radioactive salt streaked along the counter. She starts to gather dead bees before her eyes burn and tear. As the wreckage cools, we line up, we wait for the carnival ride to begin spinning again. How long have we been blasting the buzzing mountain? The dark, new buildings lean toward the sea, an optical illusion, some say, like peace, democracy. We used to think in terms of moving on. Now the train station might as well be a hospital ward where a barefoot boy dances by himself at the end of the platform. But even before this, there were signs of compressed heat, an absence in the swell. Did they tell us to sell the parks, libraries, estuaries? Did they tell us our lives were best kept private so we wouldn't be missed? Did legislators palm the dawn and the signature of trees? And did we openly greet hurricanes, name them Cindy, Susan, Cheryl Ann, as if we could sexualize what we had tampered with? What about a night so clear, a milk so blue, fresh bread steaming, spreading the smell of butter and tomato, a chair made by a father kept for a great-great-grandchild, a pair of worn brown shoes at the threshold. So once again, what I love about this anthology is that I was able to also connect with my mentors when I was at NYU. Sharon Olds was the poet who was directing the entire program, so it was so beautiful to be in this anthology with her. This poem is called With That Smile. And I live in San Francisco, so this poem takes place in San Francisco, Dolores and 18th. From the driver's seat, palm trees, bulbous at the base, mark the hill before me, like posts on a roller coaster, going up, up. The trees are stuck in line. They seem resentful. Forget humans, they might say. Forget the carnival. It's trash, sugary plastic cups, pink straws used for minutes, then tossed into a black bin. I push on the gas and feel my stomach tingle. Sometimes I think when I'm driving up Dolores Street, past the Moorish entryway with a blue sky ceiling, the newly repainted crystal white Victorian, past a red Speedo wearing dog walker smeared with sunscreen, a blanket wrapped homeless teenager searching for aluminum cans, that to be human now is to be beyond cooperation, our brains colonized by consumption. Yet yesterday, as I drove the same stretch between two of the largest palm trees, I spotted a man in a construction hard hat and bright orange vest turning around. And as he turned, first in profile, then in full view, he smiled like water flung quick in my face. I was caught off guard by how much that opening could reorganize the atoms of my body. That smile that seemed to be for no one in particular, for everyone. The girl he had kissed 10 years before, the mother who had lifted him into her arms, the game in the ninth inning, the sweep of a perfect pitch, the smile like a spring erupting in the desert was a Mobius strip, for me, then not for me. An energy I knew to be whole. Caravaggio never painted us con questo sonriso, because to do so would mean to never put the brush down, to never stop layering. So I've noticed these days that words just keep sort of reoccurring, like in the work, like this idea of living in a carnival, like the idea of mirrors and illusion. And I think when we live in empire, we're often sort of living in somewhat of a fantasy. And so I try and break that in places in certain poems. This poem I have is from, actually, it was written a long time ago, and it tries to do that from the perspective of reaching people in different parts of the world and recognizing my place in a superpower and trying to take responsibility for that, but also to recognize in the end, you know, we all come together in terms of the primal unity if we're willing to kind of really be present. So it's called The Loudspeaker. And I take that from a documentary that was done in 1937, and I think it's narrated by Hemingway, and it's about the Civil War in Spain. And they had this loudspeaker going through the countryside, calling on people. So this is it. The loudspeaker. In the Ogden Desert, they skim it from muddy water, pour it over cactus meat, ululations crisp as morning birds. With fossils, they tune innards, with tails, right. Pause for good light, let it pass through the remains, the loudspeaker warbling in low tones. In Oaxaca, they carve it of radishes, contorted shapes shaved into violins, slung into trees, cutting a thick rained foliage sonata for African bees. Some measures drizzling the branches, others hidden in the roots. The pulse endlessly trilling in the city of angels where it resurfaces by the docks. 50 varieties of nightshade and sweet pearl, 50 sacks of thistle grown entirely by pitch. As the what if of the inflamed song split the surface like a whale's tail, Argentines collected sun-bleached cardboard in the storm of smells, knowing ours by the heat of another's body. Will we hear it en masse? The solipsistic question, why do they hate us, flaking to an inarticulate texture, dusty rafters quaking until undone, horn-like, piece by piece, we enter the loudspeaker, addressed as stranger. You are the last stranger, little organ, little ear, all your lorries loaded with air. Here we are the spoils, the breath, a wilderness, broken date, all wound, a wilderness of books becoming wind. Here we turn like snake tails or great bridal veils toward the untoward self, reaching for our own pushing away, as in your voice long dead will reach the shores of others through calculus, pausing beneath public poplars, their golden fans applauding, mama, 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 kissing you, caressing a rhythm. I will end with a smaller poem that's also in the anthology. And once again, thank everyone for coming today and the words of all these wonderful poets that I'm able to read with. It's called Matter. It matters that the young ones slept on the marble steps all night to keep the school open, reached for each other's cold, numb hands for the first time, heat rising in their hungry stomachs. Someone runs to get burritos and through the din of sirens and barricades does not return. Nothing and everything matters when the matter is money. Their bodies are money, their bodies debt. I owe everything to the stars and the moss-covered rocks outside the main library, I overheard one of them say once in a poem never written down. So never burned in the pyre started by a group that was paid $10 an hour and promised Subway sandwiches. In the fourth book on forgiveness, the young lovers are exhausted, their salty bodies swollen and resting, their bright eyes closed as if to say, please do not call this pornography. Please remember all our lives together are one body ablaze. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Soki. That was really beautiful. Thank you so much. That line about our brains are colonized by consumption will stay with me. So our next reader is Jane Hirschfield. Jane has published 8 collections of poetry, most recently The Beauty. She's also the author of 2 books of essays, including 10 Windows, How Great Poems Transform the World. Jane's honors include fellowships from the Guggenheim and Rockefeller Foundations, the NEA, and the Academy of American Poets. And her work has appeared in 8 editions of the Best American Poetry. In 2012, she was elected a chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. Jane, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so very much. I was hugely honored to be asked into this anthology that was born of compassion and the desire for equity. So thank you for that. And I'm also very honored to follow such a great reading and to look forward to the others that are about to come. So I'm going to start with the poems that are in this book. Oh, also thank you, Tattered Cover, one of the great bookstores of the country. I first read there in person in 1994 as a very young poet, and I was so thrilled to go to this legendary store and be able to be at their podium. Okay, so the poems. In my wallet, I carry a card. In my wallet, I carry a card which declares I have the power to marry. In my wallet, I carry a card which declares I may drive. In my wallet, I carry a card that says to the merchant, I may be trusted to pay her. In my wallet, I carry a card that states I can borrow a book in the town where I live. In my hand, I carry a card. Its lines declare I am cardless, carless, stateless, and have no money. It is buoyant and edgeless. It names me one of the order of all who will die. My luck. My luck lay in the road, copper side up and copper side down. It shone. I passed it by. I turned around. I picked it up. I shook my beggar's cup, quite full. I left it there to be refound. I bent down and I unbent up, copper side down, copper side up, between the air and ground, left there, picked up, my luck. Three-legged blues, and apologies to those who are counting. It's called Three-Legged Blues, and it is a blues, but it's in the rhythm of a waltz. And I love the poet Kay Ryan's brother-in-law put this to music and made a great song out of it. It lets you hear the chipper sound of it. Three-legged blues. Always you were given one too many, one too few. What almost happens doesn't. What might be lost, you'll lose. The crows will eat your garden. Weeds will get what's left. Your cats will be three-legged, your house's mice be blessed. One friend will take your husband, another wear your dress. No, it isn't what you wanted. It isn't what you choose. Your floors have always slanted. Your roof has paid its dues. Life delivered you a present, a too small pair of shoes. What almost happened won't now. What can be lost, you'll lose. Now, this book was a long time coming. As you heard Ben and Claire say, it was born in 2015, and it was a little slow getting into its finished condition. And so since that bio you heard, I wrote another book. So my 9th book of poetry, Ledger, has poems in it that, had they been written when they asked me for work, would have been sent in. And I thought I would end my reading with the final poem in the book, because it would have been so apropos if it had only been written. So, you know, the book is called Ledger. So this theme of counting and accounting runs through it. And I liked the prose statement that I wrote for the anthology enough that that went into the book as a prose poem. So it's in there too, but instead of reading that, I'm going to read you this. It's a poem written as a kind of apology for the darkness of what precedes it. This is a book with the crises of social justice and the biosphere at its center. I had written another poem, The Darkest Thing I've Ever Written, which terrified me. And I realized after I had done that, that it is simply rude to the beauty of the world to not praise it, to only look towards the possible darkness which is coming. And so this ended up the last poem in the book as an apology to that great beauty for all that I spoke of before it. My debt. Like all who believe in the senses, I was an accountant, copyist, statistician, not registrar, witness, permitted to touch the leaf of a thistle, the trembling work of a spider, to ponder the Hubble's recordings. It did not matter if I believed in the party of particle or of wave, as I carried no weapon. It did not matter if I believed. I weighed ashes, actions, cities that glittered like rubies on the scales I was given, calibrated in units of fear and amazement. I wrote the word it, the word is. I entered the debt that is owed to the real. Forgive, spine-covered leaf, soft-bodied spider, octopus lifting one curious tentacle back toward the hand of the diver, that in such black ink I set down your flammable colors. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jane. Thank you. I love that octopus image. It's sort of adorable and lovely. Our third reader is Cheryl Luna. Her book, Magnificent Errors, received the 2020 Ernest Sandin Prize in Poetry from the University of Notre Dame Press. Her other books include Pity the Drowned Horses, winner of the Andres Montoya Poetry Prize, and Seven, a finalist for the Colorado Book Award. She received the Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Foundation Award, endowed by Sandra Cisneros, and was recently elected to the Texas Institute of Letters. Please help me welcome Cheryl Luna. I think you're muted, Cheryl.
Is that better? I'm so honored to be here. I'm very happy to be in an anthology with this particular theme, and I'm honored to read with these wonderful poets. first one I'm going to read is called Not One Red Cent. I steal toilet paper, boiled beans, and garlic, bless and baptize pennies. Kabbalah, forbearance in the face of insult. America, I am a connoisseur of the divided dollar. For some, a sticky nickel found comes as joyous as love. E pluribus unum sounds dirty, graven image beneath the dirty thumb. Each of my sense declares someone else's trust in God. Some say God is everywhere, even in a copper smelter's lungs. I count them out on the corner while the clerk rolls blue eyes, sets her hand on a fat hip. She sighs, moves them 2 by 2 into the arc of her palm. I want to write about whales, think of Jonah in the belly of one, punished, then expunged onto land. I walk unlike Jonah, wool cap pulled over my ears, thinking I am not welcome anywhere. The second one I'm going to read is called Lowering Your Standards for Food Stamps. Words fall out of my coat pocket, soak in bleach water. I touch everyone's dirty dollars. Maslow's got everything on me. 14 hours on my feet, no breaks, no smokes or lunch, blank-eyed movements, trash bags, coffee burner, fingers numb. I am hourly protestations and false smiles. The clock clicks at slowing, faces blur in a stream of hurried soccer games, sunlight, and church certainty. I have no poem to carry, no material illusions. Cola spilled on hands, so sticky-fingered, I'm far from poems. I'd write of politicians, refineries, and a border's barbed wire, but I am learning America's languages with a mop. In a summer red polyester top, I sell lotto tickets. Cars wait for gas. A jackhammer breaks apart a life. The slow globe spirals, and at night, black space has me dizzy. Visionaries off their meds and whacked out meth heads sing to me. A panicky fear of robbery and humiliation drips with my sweat. Words, some say, are weeping twilight and sunrise. I am drawn to dramas, the couple arguing, the man headbutting his wife in the parking lot, 911, no metered obit, and nobody but myself to blame. Okay, this one's called Chico's Tacos, about my hometown, El Paso. A huge roach skitters along your white stucco outside wall. Streets fill with impalas, Chevys, cholos, abuelas. Fathers sit at formica tables, the tiled peels. Counterworkers speak Spanish. Women wear polyester and sandals. Men don leather jackets from years ago. The lone striped suit and slick expensive shoes, always some style. The young in tight jeans, high heels, nothing like a late night dance break at Chico's, where caliente, red water, y dried red chile, soaked flautas piled high with cheese, extra cheese, and indulgence comes like sizzling cola. The border refinery streams and twin barbed wire stretches across the river to protect freedom. It's really cash, and everyone feels it subliminally in the paper cups. The Indio beggar, baby hanging off her slanted back, an old styrofoam cup held out, eyes dusk. In the past, there were droves, guareñas, now scattered like tumbleweeds across the desert. The flame at Asarco, once ablaze, now snuffed. Copper smelting killed the land. Children can't play in the sand. Languages mix. There will be no celebrities, no Lexus, no thin models, maybe Oscar de la Hoya, mariachis, the musical song of a city drowning on the edge of nowhere. You won't find a beach. Some days, sands blow hair hard and skin feels pecked by a chicken in the valley near Sleta, where the Tigua Indian casino closed after East Texas oil men lost their wealth. Underground water near Waco tanks bartered like people's lives. But you can always find Chico's tacos being devoured, a small pleasure for the poor. And those who grow rich return to Chico's because it's something of home, something to be found nowhere else. And why would anyone care? It's no bluegrass bar, it's no rock and roll cafe. No, it's slimy, crowded, sweaty. It's full of Mexicans, a few gringos, the viejitas. Great USA, great patriotic home. This is your hidden pleasure domain. Maquiladora workers in Juarez murdered, Mexican Americans hating Mexicans, cumbias, rancheras, dollar dances, quinceañeras, gay bars, maracones dance in the street of Juarez. Scenic drive overlooks a million lights. There's no full circle back for some. It's all dry joblessness. Chicos, Luckies, and always the wretched university with its Bhutanese architecture, large and looming on the smoggy border like some paradoxical crime. And then I'm going to read one more. It's called The Loser. Although I lost the car, the house, the better job, my eyes wander everywhere and nowhere. I'll dive deep into the water, splash my animal hair, my torso, sunned and bare. I'll grow strawberries and melons, and my vegetables will bloom dark green. I'll dream and undream a million old things. Own a gazebo, a stone bridge, a palomino. My imaginary cottage will have birdsong and shade. The sun will purchase my gaze. I'll count heaven in my forgotten language. Weary of salesmen who want me to sell time, I wander lush lazy to and fro, sing while trees are taken by light. Hustlers wear their shoes signed. I'm barefoot in the stream. They left us behind among daffodils floating in the light. Crabapple blossoms ebb white with sky. Thank you.
Those were fantastic. Oh, I was gonna say those are fantastic poems, Cheryl. The way that Chico's Taco, it kind of brings together, it seems, all of America, and all the strains and people, and that last poem, The Loser, is so moving and it's got such spirit to it. Thank you. Our fourth reader is Kevin Prufer. Kevin is the author of several collections of poetry, most recently How He Loved Them, published in 2018, Churches, which came out in 2014, and In a Beautiful Country, all from Four Way Books. He's also co-editor of, among others, New European Poets, came out in 2008, and Into English, Poems, Essays, Commentaries, both from Grey Wolf, the latter out in 2017. Kevin is a professor of English and creative writing at the University of Houston. Let's welcome Kevin Prufer.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for inviting me to do this and inviting me to be in this really great book, Claire and Benjamin. And thanks to Tattered Cover too for sticking with the book business and making this great book available for people who would want to get it. It's a really good read. I've been reading it the last couple of days. It is a really good book. I'm just going to read a few poems. This one's called True Crime, and it rhymes. True crime. One rich motherfucker bashed another rich motherfucker's face in with a gold-plated putter. So the golf club's snack bar was all a twitter. Because who knew? Right here at Briar Cliff Acres, good God, said the river. Good God, said the wind in the pennant, the yacht at the dock. One forensic examiner filled the sand trap with sodium light, while another dusted a 9-iron with fingerprint powder. The half-plastered ladies in tennis whites at the taped-off perimeter whispered among themselves, how sad. And here is $1, the birds called to each other, pulling grubs from holes in the oak trees. Here is $1, $1, $1. And one squirrel, burying his nut in the weedy grass by the water hazard, muttered, got one, then went off in search of another. And when for a moment the sun disappeared behind a cloud and rain watered the fairway, the Bermuda grass grew greener, thicker, and louder with providence, with God's holy love. Oh, rich motherfuckers, we live in a world of wealth and thunder. Just ask the rat and his hole full of plunder. Ask the beaver and his barge of sticks. One of you may be conked beside the golf cart's tire, but the other has 2 tickets to Zurich, one for himself and one for the dead man's daughter. Such bounty. The sun gilds us until we glitter. Both these poems are sort of about television. You know, true crime on TV. I watch a lot of that on the True Crime Network. This one's also about television, but it's about the National Geographic Network. So I guess that's also speaking to money. It's called The Vast Economies. What is the point of money? Said the leopards at work on the still quivering gazelle. The gazelle looked at the sky as if contemplating the afterlife. Then it closed its eye. All its verdant afternoons among the foliage were not even memories anymore. 0. What is the point of a salary? The camera crew, hiding in the tall grass, recorded the scene. First there was 1 leopard, and then there were 2. When the meat stopped shuddering, the leopards left, and 3 jackals skulking by the waterhole ate next. What is the point of currency? 0 point. Then came spotted hyenas, white-backed buzzards, pincered water beetles. The camera crew sat in the tall grass eating sandwiches. They'd had a good day's work for which they'd be well paid. The leopards circled them hungrily. There are, the leopards said, economies greater than those you think you know. A camera remembers everything you tell it to remember, but it has no ideas. Now it recorded the gazelle's bones, mostly stripped of gore. The camera crew packed away their equipment. The leopards watched them closely. The gazelle had 0 left to spend. This poem is just called Love Poem. No money, and the mailbox grew wet and empty-hearted in the rain. No money, and the ambulance's great red eye lit someone else's sleeping street. They made me leave the hospital and come home, where moneyless, I looked out the window into the rain. You were empty, asleep, and untouchable in your hospital gown. Emptily, the nurses walked past me, their sympathetic heels chipping the linoleum. That bruise where the IV goes was round as the absence of a coin. And you, asleep, the tube in your throat, both terrifying and I don't know what to call it, broke? Without money, the world stops. The world's great cities close their eyes. Then the heart goes dead no matter how they pound it. Without money, I keep driving the long road from the hospital, cursing the nurses who touched my arm so gently and said, "Go home now. There's nothing you can do." Darling, it's much easier to talk about money, to spend myself inside this poem. Wake up. You've slept and slept while the rain came down. Say something, anything at all. Open your bankrupt mouth. And I'm just going to with one really short poem, which is called Postscript. So it's a good poem to end on. Postscript. Here is my receipt for the paper, thank you. It snowed the whole way to the store, which was crowded with secretaries. Thank you for reimbursing me for my expenses. And here is my receipt for the pencils. Now you will have something to write with. It's still snowing, but I don't mind. The secretaries at the store were warming their hands on cups of coffee. I could file those for you. Would you like that? I could clip them in nicely with a 3-hole punch. You shouldn't have to worry about little things. What with the snow falling like secretaries? What with the snow falling like a million poems? I could gather them for you, clip them into the 3-ring binders. And don't you love the lines of secretaries trudging down the street with their bags and coffee? Yes, I guess it's been a long day. I'm a little tired. Yes, the secretaries falling from the sky like cut-out angels were just too much. So many wings cluttering the avenue. Here are the poems I have gathered, and this is the receipt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great. Open your bankrupt mouth. That's pretty harrowing. It's just an incredible line. Our final reader for the evening. Oh, it's hard to just shake off one reading and go to another. You know what I mean? I feel like we need to smoke a cigarette now or something. Our final reader for the evening is Ross White. He is the author of Charm Offensive, winner of the 2019 Sexton Prize, and 2 chapbooks. He's also the director of Bull City Press, an independent publisher of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and editor of 4-Way Review. Ross teaches at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and is associate director of the Frost Place Conference on Poetry. His poems have appeared in American Poetry Review, New England Review, Tin House, the Southern Review, and many other venues. Please welcome Ross White.
Ben and Claire, thank you for the chance to be here tonight. It's such a joy to read with poets whose work you adore, your teachers, your mentors, your heroes. And Tattered cover, thank you. It's always a delight to step foot in that store. Hope to do it again soon. I'm going to read 3 poems for you tonight. 2 are from the anthology. I'm going to sandwich one in there that's not. This first poem mentions my father's work at the National Bank of Washington, which was seized by federal regulators in 1990 at the height of the savings and loan scandal. And at the time, the government took a lot of action to regulate the financial sector. But as those regulations have been repealed, we've kind of seen the same financial catastrophes reoccur and reoccur. This poem begins with an epigraph from John Garamendi, which reads, "We see Occupy Wall Street protesters crying out for an America that lets all of us reach for the American dream again. A dream that says if you work hard and play by the rules, you can have a good life and retire with dignity." Savings and loan. Occupy the late 1980s. Occupy my parents' contentious divorce, the frozen joint account. Occupy every other weekend. Occupy the long car rides with my father, dialing his own answering machine from the car phone to leave messages for himself. Occupy the crushing boredom he must have felt driving me across Maryland, Delaware, Northern Virginia on Saturday afternoons without real destinations in mind. Occupy the National Bank of Washington on Sunday mornings, tugging at bronze chains to light bent green desk lamps, tiny under the Florentine chandelier of its Titanic lobby, the Renaissance grandeur of its sandstone and hand-painted trim. Money breathed life into my father. He push-pinned new branch locations into city maps with the care of a Caravaggio. So many more temples to transactionality. In the quiet of money, he would work and I would kneel before the polished steel vault door or skip behind the teller counters. All week, he must have waited to be alone in the presence of money. He must have hated to share it with me every odd weekend, but I was nothing if not reverent. My mother told me it was impolite to talk about money, so I never told anyone about the dark silver wheel of the vault door, the stale smell of sitting currency. I never asked questions. The regulators in dark suits came to the house one night. I never asked questions. My father moved into an efficiency apartment, researched spousal privilege. I never asked questions. He seemed spent by money, though money was his occupation. It was all that could occupy him. This poem's called From Money. My parents used the term from money. It meant a lineage, but I envisioned a woman emerging naked and fully formed from sierras of unmarked bills. There was no derision in the term, but an understanding that she was not like us. She had not worked a day in her life. She had never worn mittens with holes in them. Her house had central heat instead of a wood stove. She knew how to shuck an oyster, always knew which fork was appropriate. There was a lot we knew that she could not. But it was understood that these were Pandora kinds of knowledge. I asked if it was better to not have money than have it, but they said it was more elegant to come from money. The nouveau riche, they said, suffered from the one great affliction, a lack of manners. I said, it doesn't seem like the bad kind of suffering. They said, you're too young to know what shame is. But you know, I said. They argued behind the closed bedroom door once about a prostitute. I envisioned the prostitute naked on sheets of crisp $100 bills. I understood even then that money and sex were cousins, though the order of the transaction confused me. The art of the deal, how to get what you want, withhold whatever has value. My father kept secret that he was starting another family. We could have, with a little detective work, sleuthed it out. Rule number 1, follow the money. People will do terrible things to get it. My half-brother was born. No, he was minted. God, I haven't read that poem in a long time. It was written before a disastrous presidency. It cribbed his book title. I gotta get that out of there now. Gross. I feel gross. This last poem mentions the Keating Five, which was a group of senators who improperly interfered with an investigation into a failing savings and loan in Nebraska after taking substantial campaign contributions from its chairman, Charles H. Keating Jr. Senators John McCain and John Glenn were 2 of the 5 legislators who were found to have acted improperly. Both ran again for office, both handily won their re-election bids, both later ran for president. Good times. dark money. Of all lies, the worst is the truth will set you free. I don't think truth unshackled my father. Truth paid his moving expenses, set him up in his grandmother's house with his new wife, his former secretary, and 2 children he didn't know how to talk to. Truth banished him from branch location and operations, from belonging to the fraternity of money. And in his exile, he wandered by motorcycle from flea market to gun show. In 25 years since, I don't think truth has, like a magician, swept doves from under its handkerchiefs or doubled my father's joints to free him from the straitjacket and cuffs. He collects badges, detectives, marshals, the old silver stars. He still believes in law and order, even as the television he keeps muted shows him images of protesters, of the officers who discharged weapons into unarmed teens. Has it brought him any comfort to know where the money came from, whose pockets it now lines? Has it brought him any comfort to speak that truth to regulators? Sometimes in my dreams, I see the Keating Five seated in a circle, cigars and good scotch in a dim room. They laugh about dark money, having taken so much out in the open. And John Glenn says, I could still go back into space. And John McCain says, who knows, maybe I'll just run for president. And then they both do. But before, my father shuffles in, his expression neutral, a white cloth draped over his arm, puts their empties on his tray, and asks if there's anything else he can do for them. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you all so much for these readings. Thank you for your time. We are at Tattered Cover are very honored to always celebrate new and old works of poetry, but it's something we really love to highlight here. And so we are honored to have you all at our reading this evening. You can get your copies of The Poetry of Capital at tatteredcover.com or at any one of our locations. I want to do a quick round robin where we just let everyone remind people who they are, where they can find them online outside of The Poetry of Capital, of course. And I'm just going to go in a circle here. So if I call your name, unmute yourself and here you go. But Benjamin, you are first, sir.
It's not directly relevant to the evening, but my new book is called My Husband Would, from the University of Tampa Press, 2020. So check it out. And thank you, McKaylee, and thank you all the readers. It was just a wonderful event.
Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, my last book was Lingo from the University of Akron Press, and I'll just echo what Ben said. Thank you for a beautiful evening, for McKaylee organizing this, and to Tattered Cover. Thank you.
I have Cheryl next in my window here. Oh, we got to unmute you, Cheryl.
Hi, you can find me on Twitter at Cheryl Luna, and my most recent book is 7 from 3 at House Press.
Ross, you're next.
I'm on Twitter at Ross White, or catch any of the books that I work on at bullcitypress.com. My next chapbook is Valley of Want, and that'll be out in September.
Jane.
Jane Hirschfield. There's a Facebook author page on me, but I'm not on it. You can search around. Most recent book, Ledger, came out the very day that the world changed for the pandemic, 2020, March 10th. And well, that the world changed in America for the pandemic. And thank you all for those spectacular poems. I'm very grateful to have been able to hear them on The Voice.
Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for the great poems. I'm at kevinprufer.com or on Facebook, and that's my new book. It's a book of poems confusingly titled The Art of Fiction Poems. and it's just out.
And last but certainly not least, Sochi.
Hi, Sochi, Ketzel, Candelaria. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been such an amazing experience. You can find me on Facebook, and I'm working on an anthology about June Jordan and her work. So that'll be coming out soon.
And I'm McKaylee from Tattered Cover Bookstore. Once again, I want to thank you all for shopping locally, for keeping your money in your community. It means the world to us, more than you will ever know. And thank you to these amazing artists for their kindness, their candor, and their work, for sharing it with us all tonight in a multitude of ways. You can get the full collection of The Poetry of Capital at tatteredcover.com. If you all will stick around while I just finish closing us out here. Thank you all again for joining us. Check out our future events at tatteredcover.com/event. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading. Good night, all. And we're out.